Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski. I'll be your host for today. Those who've been following along over the next 3 weeks, we'll be talking about ocean plastic. So why it's a problem, what's happening, and what people are doing to try and solve the issue. So we had a whole week of events last week. We've got 2 more weeks coming up. We're talking to scientists, explorers, conservationists, advocates, different organizations, all hearing their stories and learning a little bit about what they're doing to protect our oceans. So I'm really excited today to be joined by Kahi Pacarro. He's the Executive Director of Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii. He's focused on exposing the issues surrounding the overconsumption of plastics and commercially fished seafood by hosting large-scale cleanup events across the state of Hawaii. So Sustainable Coastlines started in 2010 when a group of 10 friends got together because they wanted to do something about the marine debris problem. That group now has grown into one of the world's largest marine debris cleanup organizations. So Kahi, it's so great to have you joining us today. We'd love to hear a little bit about you as well as Sustainable Coastlines.
Right on. Well, thank you very much, Joe, for this opportunity to speak to all this youth. Hello, everybody out there. I'm so stoked to see you all. Yeah, shakas. All right. So Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii, like Joe was saying, started in 2010. But before we all got together to start the organization, it really happened when I was on my local beach on the east side of the island where the winds are blowing onshore almost all the time. And I was looking at the waves and looking at the horizon and just admiring how clean I thought the beach was. And my friend next to me, who was already like awakened to the issue of plastic pollution, was shocked that I wasn't noticing the problem at my own feet. I was telling him, look how clean our ocean is, look how clean our beaches were. And he was like, are you serious? Like, look at your feet. And when I looked down, what I saw was confetti, different colors, blues, whites, yellows, oranges, reds, purples. And I didn't see them before. It's like I had always been looking straight ahead and not down at my own feet. And the shocking thing is those colors were actually tiny pieces of plastics we call microplastics. And it was at that point where I was just shocked. I was right away awakened. And I felt that if I didn't realize that this was happening, I had a very good education. I had traveled around the world a bunch of times. And I was blind to the problem at my own beach. How many other people were also blind to this problem? So that was really the impetus that really got us going to start our organization, primarily to provide that exact same experience to everybody that comes to our beach cleanups. Because if we don't even realize it's there, how are we going to make changes to stop it from happening ever in the first place? So that's really how it got going. As we grew, we really focused on making our beach cleanups a lot of fun. So treasure hunts for the kids, games for the kids, live music, food, guest speakers, and other vendors at our cleanups. And it just took the notch of us just being a beach cleanup into it becoming more like a festival. And last year or earlier this year, we hosted our largest one. We had over 1,600 people come to a cleanup, and we removed thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. And then just 2 weeks ago on Molokai, we removed our largest haul of trash ever with 45,000 pounds of trash. So we're making big impacts, but at the same time, we are awakening a lot of people, thousands of people. To date, we've awakened over 35,000 people just simply at our beach cleanups. And we want people to realize that if all we ever do is clean our beaches, that's all we're ever going to do. We need to look where this is coming from. And clean beaches really start at home. They start in your classroom, they start in the office, and they don't start at the beach. Cleaning up beaches is a reactive solution, and we need proactive solutions like you kids out there coming up with the newest designs of products, or maybe a full replacement for plastic, because this is kind of hard to understand, but realize that pollution is the result of failed design. So that's kind of just the quick gist of who we are and what we're trying to do. I can go on and on and on about other things as well. But I also wanted to, I think, Joe, maybe you have some things that you wanted me to specifically focus on.
Yeah, absolutely, Kahi. So you hit on a really important point right at the beginning, that we can clean our beaches like crazy, but we're not really doing anything if we're not tackling plastics at the source. So there's a great analogy a speaker used earlier in the week. It would be like if your bathtub was flooding and you were just mopping up the floor. Well, your bathtub's just going to keep flooding if you don't turn the tap off. So can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the things you're doing to try and educate people before the plastics hit the ocean?
Yeah, so during the cleanups, we have people start identifying what they're finding. So it might be a top of a bread clip, it might be a bottle cap, it might actually be a bottle or even a toothbrush. And then having people realize, hey, this may be something that you use every day, or your friends use, or your family uses. What if you didn't use that anymore and you use something else? So, for example, a toothbrush, because we find hundreds of toothbrushes. What if we all switched to a bamboo toothbrush that when it did get away from us, when we threw it away, it would biodegrade versus potentially end up in our oceans? So really looking at what we're finding on the beaches and having people use something else that is more renewable, biodegradable, compostable, versus something that's going to last forever and ever and ever. Because you think about a plastic fork that you might use at lunch. When you're done with it, you've used it for maybe 10, 15 minutes, you throw it away. That plastic fork is going to be in this environment longer than you, longer than your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids. The plastic just does not go away. It just breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces of its original self. And then it ends up on a beach in Hawaii, like Hawaii. And I'm there looking at my feet and I see it there. So it's about really replacing the things that you're using currently with more sustainable options. It's then utilizing your collective choices to force companies to use renewable resources or biodegradable materials. And then as you get older, it's really about you guys becoming the next leaders and really having your parents and your grandparents and yourselves become the vanguard of pushing policy to move away from plastics and oil.
All right. And then that plastic that ends up on the beaches, Hawaii's in a pretty unique spot where a lot of currents do kind of converge and pass by. So a lot of that garbage that is ending up on Hawaii's beaches didn't even come from Hawaii in the first place, did it?
99% of the trash that we're picking up on our remote beaches, like on Molokai or in Kahuku, that debris is not from Hawaii. And that's one of the other challenges we have. It's like, despite how good we get in Hawaii at using less plastic or managing our trash better, unless everybody else in the Pacific Rim also does so, we're going to continue to see this deluge of plastic washing up on our beaches. The amount that is coming ashore is only increased since we started too. Yes, and local movements to reduce our uses of plastic has grown substantially. So you would think there would be a correlation where this awareness grows, the plastic would not show up as much. But in reality, it's following the same trend line where awareness is gaining, but there's still more and more plastics washing up on our beaches. And we attribute that to more or less the rest of the Pacific Rim not quite getting the message that we're trying to put out there. So we really need people like you that provide these opportunities to speak to a broad range of students and people to allow us to get our message across. It's like your behaviors wherever you are might be affecting our beaches in Hawaii.
All right. And we have two classrooms, one from British Columbia joining us today and another from California. So those are two areas where if plastics and such washes into the water, is thrown into the oceans, then they can make their way to those beautiful beaches that you were talking about. Marine life, students love to hear about, the marine life, the birds, the sea turtles. Are you seeing in your area animals that are being affected, maybe even the monk seal, by plastics?
Yes, we're seeing the critically endangered monk seal be affected by plastic pollution every single week. They get tangled in the nets. They're super curious, and they try to play with these plastics. We've been at beach cleanups where the monk seals are throwing the plastics up in the air and trying to catch them and play with them. So their behavior of being inquisitive and curious also puts them at risk of potentially getting entangled or choking on the plastics. Then when it's talking about the birds, I've seen it firsthand, the poor baby birds that have been fed plastic by their mothers, and they end up dying because they no longer have the energy to live on, and they end up dying, and their bodies decay, and then you see the interior of their stomachs, and their stomachs are completely filled with plastic. It's really sad. And then we have our turtles as well, our endangered sea turtles. This year, on one of their major nesting grounds on Molokai, the plastic lined the entire coastline so that turtles, you could see the tracks going up to the edge of the plastic and then turning around. The turtles did not nest this year. So we are very aware that marine debris is having impacts on our native wildlife. And the sad part is, they've been here in Hawaii for thousands, if not millions of years before we ever got here. And now it's our behaviors that are forcing them either to go somewhere else or become extinct.
All right, that's hard to hear, especially there's 7 species of sea turtles, and I believe they're all threatened. And then the monk seal. Do you know off the top of your head what their numbers are like?
There's only 1,400 left, and it's scary. And they're not only threatened by plastic pollution, they're also threatened by the toxoplasmosis from cats. They're threatened by cancers. They're threatened by leptospirosis. They're threatened by us as well. Some fishermen do not get along well with the monk seals and have inadvertently caught them with their poles, and sometimes actually killed a few of them in this past year. So these poor monk seals are extremely threatened, and they're one of the most endangered species on the entire earth. And it's crazy that we don't protect them more.
All right. Well, Kahi, thanks so much for sharing a little bit with us about sustainable coastlines, about the issue. And I know it's hard to hear sometimes, but I think if we don't let classrooms hear and, like you say, awaken people to what's going on, we're not going to make that difference. But boys and girls, don't forget to ask Kahi about some good news stories, because I know he's got some of those too. So let's meet some of our classrooms and let's get you guys asking some questions. So let's see. Let's start off with, let's go to Mrs. Robinson's class. They're in Independence. I believe that's Missouri, grade 4 classroom. Let me turn their microphone on. Or actually, you can do it for me, Mrs. Robinson.
Hi, I'm Janelle. My question is, how long have you been cleaning up the beach?
We've been cleaning up the beach since 2010, and since then we've brought together close to 35,000 people onto our beaches. We've removed over 300,000 pounds of trash, and we've also begun recycling a lot of this trash because we never felt comfortable throwing it all away into the landfill or into the incinerator. So we've been doing it for almost 8 years now.
All right. Well, and I love that. That's a real success story. A group of friends going out to do something, and now over 35,000 people are joining in. So excellent. Let's meet our next classroom. We are going to go to Oxnard, California with grade 6s with Mrs. Barha. Let me turn on your microphone. How are we doing, grade 6s?
Hi.
All right. Who's got a question?
What's the question? I don't even know. I think
All right. We'll give you guys another minute and we'll swing back.
All right.
All right. All right. Let's go to Mrs. Bassett's class. They're joining us, 4th grades in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Let me turn their microphone on.
I'm
Everybody.
All right. So
Hi. Wait.
say hi.
So,
Hold on. Let's have Jillian here. Jillian wants to ask a question.
so what about landlocked states? Do they have any impact in this?
Do you understand what she asked?
Yeah, do landlocked states have any impact on coastlines? Yes, inland states definitely have impact on coastlines near you or even further away. You got to realize that everything flows downhill, and at the bottom of the hills are the oceans. Even if it gets into a stream or a river or a lake, beyond the lakes and the rivers and the streams is the ocean. Another way that it's very impactful is your collective purchasing power from a consumer standpoint. What you buy really has an impact on driving what is made. So for example, let's use the toothbrush one because that's a really easy analogy. If we all of a sudden stopped buying plastic toothbrushes, the companies would stop making them. So at the same time, if they stop making them, that means other technologies are going to come forth, like more bamboo toothbrushes or other technologies that aren't going to end up in our oceans. What we want to do is promote the behavior of a consumer that creates circular economies, so that when you're done using something, it goes back to the maker or it goes back into the soil to either make more of what you just used, or maybe to make food, etc. So you guys have a huge impact in Arkansas in keeping Hawaii's beaches clean.
All right. Great question and a great point. Let's see. Let's go somewhere close by. Let's go to, we've got a 1st grade class joining us in Honolulu. Let me turn actually, if you guys can turn the microphone on and say hi for us, nice and loud, and then we'd love a question.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Kahi. We're wondering, here in Hawaii, what's one thing we could do this week to help keep plastic out of the ocean?
Yeah. All right. So what's one thing you can do this week to keep plastic out of the ocean? You know, this answer will actually pertain to anybody, anywhere, not just in Hawaii. You know, we've kind of become accustomed to seeing trash in the streets or in the playground and just walking right over it. We need to start taking the step to just pick it up and go and throw it away in a trash can where it's not going to just blow away again. So that's one thing. You know, when you're at school, or maybe when you're away from school as well, this week, let's try to at least just pick up 3 pieces of trash. Everybody just take a few moments, and if you see trash on the ground, pick it up. Because what happens is somebody's going to see you do that, and they're going to be like, that kid's cool. I'm going to do that too. So you start creating a momentum that we need, where all of a sudden we start, it is, winds are going to come. That trash is going to go into a storm drain, and from there it's going to end up in a stream, and from there a river, from there our oceans. So stop it before it ever gets into the ocean in the first place, and you'll keep that piece of trash from ever becoming plastic pollution in our oceans, or in the stomach of a turtle or a whale, or tangling a monk seal, or just ending up on our beaches again. So yeah, make my job easier, please. Yeah, don't go and pick it up before it ever gets into the ocean in the first place.
All right, awesome. You can be the leaders. You know, other people are going to follow suit if they see you doing things like that. All right, let's visit Mrs. Hazama's class. They are joining us from Hutchinson, Kansas. We've got a grade 4 group.
Kennedy.
How's everyone doing in Kansas?
Good. All right, Kennedy. Kennedy has a question.
When you're doing cleanups, have you ever rescued any animals?
Oh, this is a sad story. We have tried to rescue animals in the past. Usually it's a bird or a turtle. The good part is with the birds, we've been able to save the birds. But most recently on Earth Day, sadly enough, a turtle came ashore with a fishing line wrapped around its arm, and when we removed it, the poor thing like looked at us and it died right there. So we try to do our best, and we call the correct agencies like our sea turtle organizations and our monk seals if we see them in trouble. But it's really sad. By the time they get to us, they're pretty hurt at that moment. And I guess what I'm trying to get to is, for those of us that are into fishing, we really need to be more careful with our lines and with our floats and our hooks and everything, and make sure if you're using it that you get it back and you take it away from the beach, because that poor turtle had that clear fishing line wrapped around its arm, and I think what happened when we pulled the line off, it somehow created bleeding and it ended up dying. So it's a really sad thing to see, but that's what's happening as a result of irresponsible fishing.
Yeah, and we only see part of the problem because we see the animals that wash up on shore, but oceans are huge and there's so many other animals affected by plastics, and we never know because we don't see them with the oceans being so large. Yeah. All right. Well, let's visit Mrs. Marks has a group joining her. They are in British Columbia. I believe they're a grade 6 classroom with Mrs. Black. Let me turn their microphone on. I think I can reach it now. There we are. How are we doing, British Columbia?
Good. Hello. How are you?
All right, who's got a question?
Question.
Jack's gonna come through. I think.
I have a question. Yeah. How much plastic is produced every second?
Oh, wow. I don't have the answer to that, but let me just try to provide some context. The amount of plastics that are created is directly in correlation with the amount of oil that's created, because plastic is made out of oil. And quantifying that is something that we don't know, because oil is created all over the world by different countries and whatnot, and controlling the supply and demand of oil allows them to keep prices where they're at. So they don't necessarily want to let people know how much oil is actually being created. But when you're talking about how much plastic is created, the scary part is when they're refining their oil to make fuels and whatnot, they end up having a byproduct that plastic starts as. This is called a nurdle. It's a tiny little piece of plastic that looks like a fish egg, and we call them mermaid's tears, but they litter our beaches. They're everywhere. And if you go to a beach, I bet you could probably find some nurdles on them. And this is a piece of plastic that never became the plastic product yet. It was destined to become one, but somehow it escaped during the travel to get to where it needed to. So that means in the factory it could have escaped, or potentially fallen overboard in a container spill out at sea.
All right, so we're going to swing through. Actually, let's check Mrs. Barha's class again in California and see if they're ready with a question. You guys have a question for us?
Yeah.
All right.
My question is, what is the hardest part of your job?
The most difficult part of our job, which I've gotten over, let's start like in the beginning. I think that the hardest part was the fact that we could clean a beach spotless. And we would clean an entire beach so there's no plastic left on the beach. And then a month later, we would come back and it would look like we hadn't done anything. The beach would be completely dirty again. So that was really hard to grasp. The fact that a lot of our work was, in a sense, to some people, a waste of time. But what we were able to do is transcend that thinking and realize back to why we got started in the first place. And that was to provide that awakening experience that left the beach cleaner changed, so that when they went home, they could no longer look at all the plastic items in their house the same way. And when they saw trash in the streets or on the beach, they could no longer walk by it without feeling the need to pick it up. So that was the hardest part in the beginning, was a dirty beach that we would clean, coming back and it would be dirty again. That has been, that was one of the hardest things. And then, you know, presently, one of the most that we're facing is the fact that people think that you can just go into the ocean and clean it up utilizing contraptions, and people pointing to different technologies that will just go clean up the mess for us. And that's like that analogy that Joe used earlier. Those are still simply just bailing out the bathtub without the awareness aspect of it. Having somebody go and clean up our oceans for us without telling us to also change the way that we consume means that companies can continue what we call the status quo. They can continue business as usual, and they are not being forced to change the way that they're making our products. It's like if your mom just made your bed every day for the rest of your life. You know, you'd never grow up, and you know, it's just not a very sustainable or a great way to grow up. You need to learn to take care of yourself and not look at other people to solve all your problems for you. But that's been another difficult challenge, because everybody thinks that we can just go out to the trash island, throw an anchor, and pull all the trash in, because that is not what it looks like out there. It is not an island twice the size of Texas. It's like a plastic soup that when you go out there, the trash goes from the surface all the way to the bottom of the ocean. And cleaning up the surface is simply that, just skimming it. And when it's out there, you're ending up hurting the existing ecosystems, and the cost to do it is astronomical when you compare to the cost of simply just going to a beach in Hawaii and cleaning it up.
All right. That is just a perfect way of summing it up. And that bed analogy, I think there's a lot of students who can probably relate to that. I see someone at the camera, Mrs. Suzama's class. So go ahead with your question.
Yep. Nice and loud then. What do you do with all the plastic you collect?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, with these huge cleanups, we are left with trucks and containers full of plastic. You know, the vast majority of what washes ashore is plastic. And you know what's really interesting is the types of plastic that are washing ashore. So when you look at the makeups of our plastics, you have you know, numbers 1 through 6. For Hawaii, what's washing up is number 2 and number 5. Yet the main type of plastic that we see used every day is number 1. That's the PET bottle. So that would be the water bottle or the soda bottle. That historically, that's what most people are using. But it's not washing up on our beaches. And the answer of why that is, the number 2 plastic, so what the bottle cap is made out of, or what a lot of other plastics are made out of, that floats. Same with number 5 plastic. So the number 2s and the number 5s, because they are less dense than seawater, they float and they make it to our beaches. So now when we're collecting it off of the beaches, the number 2s can be recycled again. And the number 5s, we're trying to figure out how to recycle them. So the number 5s are usually our ropes and our nets. Although you would think that ropes are made out of fibers like cotton or something else, they're actually made out of plastic, a plastic called polypropylene. So we haven't quite figured out what to do with the number 5s, but the number 2s, we've been able to recycle since 2011. First, it was with Method, the cleaning product company that was taking our ocean plastic and turning it into soap bottles that are available all across the country. So in all Whole Foods, you could go and get a soap bottle that was made out of plastic that was picked up off of the beaches of Hawaii. Now what we're trying to do is create a system where we are making things that we need here in Hawaii, because that's way more sustainable than picking up all this plastic, sending it across the ocean to get recycled, and then distributed around the world. What if we could just take the plastic that's washing up ashore here and make things that we need here? And next year, we're going to be doing that. So I'm really excited for 2019. We got a big grant to start making this happen. And if we can accomplish making things that we need here, that means anywhere in the world that's having a plastic pollution problem washing ashore can take our technology and our business model and replicate it to provide solutions that are local, that are really helping alleviate the need to import so many things, rather they could just make it right there where they're at.
Okay, great question. Mrs. Robinson's class, if you have another question, go ahead and turn your mic on for me. And then we'll visit Mrs. Mark's group in BC one more time.
We don't have a question, but we did want you to know that we felt really charged, or as he says, awakened by this. And we are in Missouri, but we're right next to the biggest river in Missouri. So we are thinking we're going to start taking trash cans out with us when we are on field trips or out at recess, and try every single day to pick up at least 3 things, and then just be really aware of where our trash goes. So we just wanted you to know we felt really charged by what you said, and we were going to try to pick up the baton here as well.
I really appreciate that, because, you know, from where you're at, it goes into the Missouri River, and from there makes its way to our oceans. So it's a great way for kids to be connected that way. And, you know, I'm sure maybe there's a place that you guys go swimming, or there might be a beach. You could do beach cleanups anywhere. You got to realize a cleanup in your playground, a cleanup on your streets, that's a beach cleanup. If you really think about it deeply, that is a beach cleanup, because there is no away. When you throw something away, you have to realize there's a really good chance that that away is a beach in Hawaii. So thank you guys so much in Missouri.
All right, let's jump back to British Columbia with Mrs. Black's group. Your microphone should be on.
Hi. How long until ocean plastics represent more space than actual land?
You want to repeat that question a little bit? Sorry.
How long until ocean plastics represent more space than actual land?
What we can say is that right now it's estimated that there are 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic in our oceans. I actually think that that number is drastically underestimated. But what the other thought was, they were saying that by 2030, there's going to be more mass of plastic than there are fish in our oceans. And that's a pretty scary fact. When you look at the density or the size of all the plastics in the ocean, the tough part is you've got, like I was saying, you've got plastic that is at the top, in the middle, and at the bottom. If you were to bring all of that to the surface, you know, I'm sure at that point we potentially would have the size of some continents worth of plastic in our oceans. So sorry, I can't answer that question exactly, but let's just say there is way too much plastic in our oceans.
Yeah. Another statistic that they've been using recently is every minute a garbage truck full of plastic is dumped into our oceans. So you can imagine, as the minutes add up each day, each week, each month, each year, that is a lot of plastic that's entering our oceans. All right. Well, Kahi, before we let you go, I have to ask about, do you get to take some time? Do you get to take some little breaks and get out and do some surfing?
Yes. You know, I think that is very, that's an important question. And I think it's relevant to these students as they grow up. I found my passion, and that's being in the ocean and spending as much time as I can in the ocean with my surfboards or with my family. And I make it a part of my life to make sure that I continue to do that, because connecting with nature makes you protect it. So whatever it is in nature that you love to do, get out and do it more. Because when you really think about it, Mother Nature, she doesn't need us. We need Mother Nature. Mother Nature was doing very well, actually much better before we as humans showed up. So we need to either figure out how to work with Mother Nature and live in symbiosis, or she's gonna get rid of us. And the best way for you to make these connections and these understandings are by spending as much time as you can with her, in the oceans, in the rivers, in the streams, in the forest, in the mountains. Get out and start playing, because that connection will help you make better decisions as it's related to keeping Mother Nature safe and part of the family.
All right, another just an excellent point. I lived in Australia for a while and tried my hand at surfing, and it didn't go so well. So I'm more of a scuba diver. I go down below the waves to find the good stuff. So find what you love and just do it. That's such a good message for the students. So I was going to wrap it there, but I see someone right up at the camera and Mrs. Emma's class. So I'm going to let you have the very last question, and then we'll let Kahi get his day going. So one more question.
There you go. Okay, go for it.
We really want to see the beach. Can you turn the camera so we can?
Did you hear that? I don't know if that's possible. We're in the middle of Kansas, and they really wanted to see the beach. Is it possible to turn your camera?
What I can do, I can show you Diamond Head.
Okay.
'Cause I'm not at the beach right now. Let's see if my wireless signal is strong enough. As you can see, let's see here. Let's see. So this is the city, and beyond the.
It's a town. Yeah.
Yeah. See it?
Yeah. That was great.
That's a mango tree.
Mango tree, guys.
Bananas. Bananas up there. Coconut tree. You see my coconut tree? So I wanted to actually send some photos of the beaches to everybody, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have all these teachers' email addresses. So if I sent you some photos, they'd be able to see the beaches, because I work for a nonprofit and do not live on the beach, unfortunately.
All right. Well, please do that, Kahi, and I will send the pictures to the classrooms. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Let me turn the microphones on so the boys and girls can say thank you nice and loud. So here we go. Microphones are All right. Well, boys and girls, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Kahi, thanks so much for sharing, for doing what you're doing. And we look forward to maybe connecting again in the future. Thanks, everyone.